Today, my guest is a critically acclaimed multilinguist author who's here to talk the release of his newest novel. Sebastien de Castell, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for referring to me as multilinguist, since I speak English and very bad French and 8 words of Dutch.
I'm just trying to give you some credit, but your new novel is being described as The Alchemist meets the Three Musketeers. So, with those big shoes to fill, what can you tell people about the Way of Argosy?
So, Way of the Argosy is a fantasy novel. It's set in a kind of fictional, magical Wild West about a young refugee on the run from basically a posse of war mages. She has no money, no power, no friends, but she's determined to fight back. And along the way, she meets one of the fabled Argosy, who are these kind of wandering card playing philosopher tricksters. And he offers to teach her the means to outwit her enemies, but the price might be more than she's willing to pay.
And this is the seventh entry in your Spellslinger Chronicles. So I just wanted to ask, when you started writing these novels, did you ever intend for it to turn to this big, expansive series?
I thought it was going to be, 24 books, maybe 25, something. No, truth be told, so this book is sort of, it's both the seventh book in the Spellslinger series, but it's actually the first book in its own series because it takes place before the events of Spellslinger. So for anyone who's never read Spellslinger, you can actually start with Way of the Argosy. Um, and when I started, it was a really weird thing. When you're a novelist, I'd had some success with The Great Coats, which is a kind of adult swashbuckling fantasy series. And then I had started writing this other series called Spellslinger. And my agent was shopping it around. And I sort of went over the course of one weekend from one publisher saying kind of begrudgingly, well, I guess it's pretty good. We'll give you, a little bit of money, but we're not so sure. To all of a sudden another publisher saying, oh, no, we're going to give you a lot of money and we want 8 books. And so it went from like, well, we'll publish one and see how it goes to like, we're committing to 8 books and you're committing to 8 books. And by the way, we want 2 books a year. So, don't you're not taking a lot of vacations in that time. So I sort of knew it was happening, but I didn't really understand the scale of it at the time.
Then something I was laughing about just in preparation for this interview, I was doing a little bit of research on you yourself, and I found this little excerpt right here that I'll read off. Sebastien de Castell had just finished a degree in archaeology when he started work on his first dig. 4 hours later, he realized how much he actually hated archaeology and left to pursue a very focused career as a musician, interaction designer, fight choreographer, and more. So, with all that, I just wanted to ask for a little bit more depth on that story, maybe. Was it really that black and white for you, or what was that process like?
Well, like a lot of us, I think there's a particular Canadian phenomenon where you go to university and switch majors 20 times. Like I see a lot of Americans making fun of it, but then when I talk to Americans, it seems like they actually are, pretty focused. And almost every Canadian I know switched majors about a dozen times at least. I pretty much went for everything. Like I sort of went through every department. I kind of settled on archaeology when I realized I had mistakenly taken too many credits in archaeology, and I was either going to have to spend a whole other year or get my degree in archaeology with a minor in history. And that was back when the third Indiana Jones movie was coming out, and I remember a professor in the archaeology department, when I was saying I was going to declare my major, he said, "So did you see Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade?" And I said, "Yep." And he said, "Yeah, that's what happens." And with all the suitable warnings that that's not actually what the life is like. But then I was doing my technical practicum, and so I went to England. I got permission to go to a different day because usually in Canada you'll go on there's tons of archaeology in Canada, but it's usually kind of prehistoric archaeology. I mean, almost all archaeology is sort of prehistoric in a way, but I was sort of interested in European archaeology, and so I got permission to go to Sutton Hoo, which is a pretty famous dig. Like when you see that sort of Viking-looking helmet, that's often on the cover of archaeology books, that's from Sutton Hoo. But I went after everything was basically already dug up, and I got there, and I wasn't feeling very well, and I kind of, suffered through the first couple of hours with my toothbrush in the dirt. And I was looking around at everybody was happy and everybody was miserable. And the happy people were all people who like camping. And the unhappy people were like me and like everybody else who had gone to see Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Then, before we close, just for people who might be keen on checking out some of your work, where can they go to learn more about Sebastien de Castell?
So the best place to find me is right at my website, which is www.decastell.com. So it's just DECASTELL.com. And Way of the Argosy, which just came out in North America a few days ago. And then in a couple of months, Fall of the Argosy, the sequel follows up. So people who enjoy the book aren't going to have to wait forever to get the second book. And for fans of the Greatcoats, there's a new Greatcoat series starting early next year with Our Lady of Blades.